About 2 months ago, I broke the longest sober streak of my life. It was an intentional decision, but I had gone over a year and a half without drinking, and just a couple months ago, I had the first drinks I had had in a long time, and I experienced something that I never thought I would experience. And I'll be honest, the realm of drinking is nothing new to me. I had my fair share of drinking. It started in high school. It evolved into college, right? We were getting turned up. I played Division I football, so we didn't win many games, right, boys? But if we did, we were getting turned. And I had nights that I forgot. I had nights that I regretted the things I did. I had nights where I had one-night stands. I had nights where I drunk drove. And this carried on into my early career, my early adulthood, when I was working my first job living in Boston. I remember, coming home, stumbling home, barely remembering how I got home, losing my keys in the Uber. I remember parts of all these rough nights in Boston. And what I want to talk to you guys today is, yes, what I experienced a couple months ago when I had those first couple drinks after a year and a half of sobriety. But what I also want to talk to you is what I've seen happen in my life as a result of removing alcohol. And I want to break it down. The way I see it is there's 3 tiers. There's beginner, there's intermediate, and there's elite, right? So beginner is this shift from I'm basically a belligerent drunk. And just so you guys know, I didn't share those things like I was blackout drunk driving, had hookups. I didn't share that to brag. I shared that, to be honest, to create context so people know where I'm coming from, so that guys in a similar situation can relate and see that there is hope, see that there is a better place. But yeah, these tiers that I want to talk to you about, right? There's beginner, intermediate, and elite. So beginner is when you're going from a version of how I used to be, like degenerate Jack, where you're just getting blacked out all the time, to, let's call it respectable drinking, right? Let's call it casual drinking. I'm not going to call it healthy drinking, but we'll call it casual drinking, where, you decide to be mature about drinking. There's nothing inherently wrong with drinking, but it can be done in a mature way. So let's call the beginner stage, when you're just getting blacked out, doing whatever you want, drinking, binge drinking, right? Having 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 drinks plus a session, right? That's our beginner level. Now our intermediate level is, okay, that's our casual drinking, right? We're gonna go out, we're gonna have two, 3, hopefully keep it under 5 drinks, and it's only gonna be maybe a weekend thing, maybe, once or twice a weekend they're going out with the boys. And then there's this elite level, which is not drinking at all. And once again, there's no judgment being passed if you decide to drink. But I want to create these different stages of our relationship with drinking, and I want to tell you what I've learned in each. What I've learned as I've transitioned out of those stages. And so let's look at that beginner phase, right? This was really the thing that got me fed up and tired of the drinking. This is when I was like, something has to change because of everything I told you guys at the beginning, right? That was the worst of the worst. I thought I was a Mr. Invincible, so I would always go and drunk drive. I was struggling with lust at that time in college. I was disloyal in relationships. I would make decisions, I would say things when I would wake up in the morning and then regret it. And so I saw myself living in this cycle of not being proud of the man I was, making decisions that negatively impacted the rest of my life. I remember driving home one night and blowing out 2 tires on a curb and being like, damn, I'm being so selfish because I could have hurt somebody else. God forbid I kill somebody else. What impact is that going to have on their life? Forget me, right? What's that impact going to be on their life and their family and their friends? How selfish is it for me to keep doing this? And so I stopped. There was another reason why I stopped, is because I was trying to get in the best shape of my life, and what would happen is I would be dialed in during the weeks. But then the weekend would come, I would get blasted, and then I would go out, I'd have a full pizza, I'd have a full sub, and the next thing you know, Monday came around and I was back at the exact same place. And so I had to realize that there was a reason I was going to this extreme. And a lot of it had to do with this escaping that I was doing. I was so lacking contentment in my day-to-day life. I had so much pain from not being proud of myself, not being confident in myself, but also, pain related to a breakup, being rejected. And I didn't want to sit with myself. I didn't want to face myself, so I ran from it. I escaped it through the alcohol, through the numbing. But as I stepped away from that, I started to see I wasn't making decisions that I regretted. I actually started to see more progress in my physical growth, in my mental growth. And I started to take more control of my life, right? It was me showing up for the things that were most important, investing the time, being willing to do the work rather than escaping. And then there's kind of this intermediate phase, which is like just drinking, here and there. And I did this for a while, but still, I felt like I wasn't at my peak. I think of professional athletes, and it's like, do you think the Kobe Bryants, do you think the LeBron James or the Tom Brady's, do you think, these guys are winding down and getting drunk, or, having a couple drinks, not just once in a while, but, every single weekend? Probably not, right? They understand that what I do in this moment has so many consequences for the future. And as I got clear on the man I wanted to be, right, I wanted to build $1 million business. I wanted to be in elite shape physically. I wanted to be able to provide the best life for my family, to be able to give my kids, incredible schooling, incredible homes, the ability to travel. I started to realize that level of output, that level of man, that is a 1% man. That is an anomaly. That's not normal. That's not the guy who's going out and having beers with his buddies whenever they feel like it. That's not the guy who's drinking just because it's football Sunday. And so that's when I started to really consider going completely sober, right? It wasn't having these detrimental effects on my life, but it was still pulling me away from greatness. I was still not at my max potential. I was settling for say 70%, and don't get me wrong, my physique was solid. I could have relationships that were healthy, and that I could, show up and be a good man, and I could even pursue God and have faith and see that flourish. But I knew there was something missing, and that's what prompted me to go completely sober. And so I went sober for over a year and a half. And just what I saw was a dramatic increase in everything. My physical health was better. My focus and my energy were better. My self-awareness was better, right? I was so aware of my emotions, and I was forced to deal with them, to understand, why am I discouraged? Why am I frustrated right now? Why am I anxious? Why am I overwhelmed? There's no running to have a beer on Friday night or Saturday night, even if it's just 2 drinks, right? There is no forgetting about it, right? It's something I had to deal with. And so what it did is it forced me to face myself. It forced me to mature. And it also gave me the ability to show up as my best in every single area, right? I felt like I was approaching life from that professional athlete mindset. I want to be my best. With the professional athletes, even as I saw as a Division I athlete, there was no off season. We would have our true regular season when we're playing games competitively in the fall. And then the winter would come, we would be training the entire time aggressively, right? That was the most intense time of the season. And then the spring would come, and we would be training again too. And we would have a couple weeks off, and then once again we would go into an intensive training in the summer, right? Grueling training. And it's the same with professional athletes. Those guys are probably taking a handful of weeks, a handful of months at most off during the off season, but they're not neglecting their body. They're not going wild, at least the greats. And so I realized, me showing up as the best man I can in every single area, in my faith, in my relationships, in my career, with my physical and mental health, that's not a seasonal thing. That's a year-long thing. That's an all-the-time thing. And so that's why I committed to, I'm gonna go sober. Because what was I, like, truly ask yourself, like, if you were to stop, what would you actually be missing out on? And for me, it was like maybe a little bit more fun, but let's be real. If I just learn how to be social and I have good friends and I'm in good environments, like, I don't need alcohol to have fun. I don't need something, right, once again, to escape and to, like, create more stimulation and more dopamine. And so I just saw everything continue to flourish. And bring it back to the beginning, right? I had these first drinks for the first time in over a year and a half. I started to ask myself, because I had some opportunities with good friends and with family where I was like, we're on vacation. Maybe it would be nice to enjoy a drink. And I didn't necessarily want to be the guy that, like, never has a drink. So I was asking myself, like, can I enjoy truly, like, just here and there a couple times a year, one or two casuals. And this is where I had the craziest experience that I had never had up until this point. Because I was like, all right, it's been over a year and a half. Why don't I just try and, see what it's about, see if I enjoy it, see if it's fun, see if it's worth it. So I went out with some friends. One night I had a drink and, like, it was cool. I felt like I had a little bit more energy. I just had one drink, like tequila soda. But it was not, right, nothing special, nothing worth it. The idea of it was just, like, there was more hype around the idea of it than the actual experience. And I didn't feel terrible in the morning, right? I only had one drink, but it was still like I wasn't at that 100% peak. And so I had a couple weeks later, one more time with family where I was like, all right, I'm with family, we're on vacation. So that night we went out, I had like 2 drinks. And this is when I really had that breakthrough moment, because I remember distinctly walking to the bathroom and feeling like I was vulnerable, feeling like I was exposed, because I kind of started to see that there's like almost 3 different realms of our existence. There's the physical realm, right? Just in our physical body, the things we're saying, the things we're doing, right? The actions that we're taking. Then there's the mental realm, right? The things that we're thinking, the thoughts that we're processing, the emotions that we're having, the decisions that we're making in our head. But then there's that spiritual realm, which is where I'm connected to the Lord. I can hear him. I can discern between what I'm supposed to be doing and what I'm not supposed to be doing. And you almost, as you get connected with the Lord and you build this relationship with him, you're able to also have discernment about people, right? It's almost like you're given wisdom to understand people and where they are and where their heart is and what their motives are. It's almost like you can, read people and see them for what they are from a spiritual perspective, right? If you're connected to God and somebody walks in the room and they're connected with God, sometimes you just know by their presence. And if you have a conversation with them, like, it's very easy to know this person has Christ in their life. And the opposite is also true. And I remember walking to the bathroom after those 2 drinks. That was all I had, 2 drinks. I felt like that third level, that third sense was completely turned off. I had no connection to God. I was exposed. I was vulnerable. I felt like I was open to attack. I felt like my guard was down. I felt weak. And I felt like the enemy could come and get me anytime. Right? I was out at just a restaurant, a bar, and there was nothing crazy going on, but like I felt like anything bad, anything negative, any spiritual forces that were like in the realm, anything of, any forces of darkness that were in the realm, I was just exposed to them, right? I didn't have the armor of God on. I didn't have the truth of God on. That 6th sense, that third realm was turned off. I had no Holy Spirit connection. And even my wife, it's crazy. She was like, I felt like that night you said things that you wouldn't typically say. I felt like, your eyes were, just more wandering in general. Not that I was doing anything bad or looking at anything bad, But she's like, I felt like your eyes were just looking around more, observing more. I felt like you said things you necessarily wouldn't have said if you were in a sober mind. And it says, you know, in 1 Peter, I believe, I think it's chapter 5, it says, be sober, be vigilant. Vigilant means be aware, be alert. How do we be alert and vigilant? We're sober. Even 2 drinks, bro. That vigilance, that awareness was turned off. And here's the kicker. It says, be sober and vigilant because the enemy, he prowls around like a roaring lion. Sorry, I'm jumbling my words. It says he prowls around like a roaring lion looking for who to devour. And that's exactly what I felt that night. I felt the enemy. I felt the lion prowling around. And I felt like I could be the one to be devoured at any moment. And so, to be honest with you boys, it's been months and I just don't know if I will ever have a drink again. And once again, there's nothing wrong with having a drink, but I want to be tapped into God because there's nothing better I've ever experienced. I want to be led by Him. I want to be close to the Spirit. I want to be able to discern what's going on in my life. And even the next day, you know, I had a slight hangover. Once again, nothing crazy, but I'm trying to be elite. I want to be at the best. There's a reason it says be sober and vigilant. I'm trying to be alert. I'm trying to show up every single day and be my best. I don't want to be off the mark. I don't want to be feeling like I have to recover. Recover from what? My bad choices? What was it worth it to have a little bit extra fun? And so I just share this, not to tell you guys what to do, but to let you see, you know, what you're experiencing when you're at that beginner level, just doing whatever, letting it loose, how much that's holding you back, how much consequences there are there. And once you get to that intermediate level, you know, drinking casually, having some restraints around it, but still, you know, you just do it here and there whenever, even if it's not crazy, the amounts, crazy volume, you're still holding yourself back from peak potential 100%. And the question is, do you want that? And if you want that deepness with the Lord, consider it. Give it a try. You don't have to go sober for your whole life, but give it a try. 30, 60, 90 days, bro. Once you experience that, it's almost like you never want to go back. And it's not almost like you do. It's like you don't want to go back. You realize you're missing nothing. And life is so much better. It's so much more fun. It's so much more fulfilling. I have so much more contentment sober. And praise the Lord. Praise the Lord for that. So boys, if you feel like you have a vice that you want to drop, right? It could be alcohol. It could be weed. It could be porn. If you feel like you know how you want to show up as a man, but you're just not able to do that, right? You don't have the system, the structure. You've been slacking with the physique, or you're just going through the motions. You know, you're only at 70%. You want to deepen your relationship with God and really show up at your peak in every single area. What you can do is, there's a link in the description of this video. You can book in a free call with me. We're going to get crystal clear on where you are, where you want to be, what's holding you back. We're going to identify the gap. We're going to come up with a plan to get you to that place that you want to be. And if it's a good fit for you to come on, join the team, join my one-on-one coaching, we'll get you on board, bro. We'll absolutely rip. And if not, what I'm going to do is at least make sure I point you in the right direction. So boys, was it worth it? I would say definitely not. Am I glad I tried it? Yes, because I gained wisdom, I gained understanding, and I gained confirmation on why this isn't for me. I gained confirmation on why being sober is better. I saw again, you know, the benefits aren't just being at my physical peak, my peak in my career, being able to show up every day with focus and energy, but it's being at my spiritual peak, tapped into God. And I know when I'm tapped into God, that's the best place I could ever be. That's where I'll become the most powerful man. That's where I'll become truly the man God has created me to be. Alrighty, boys, tap into that potential. Become the man God's calling you to be. Let's go.